my first marriage, I was very much, what's the word? I was kind of locked away, and I was sort of, given the rules and had to stick with them.
You've been emotionally abused.
Emotionally, mentally.
I didn't feel like he got the fact that I was also a human being with my own feelings and thoughts.
Mariah Carey's first marriage was disturbing to say the least. A major music executive tracked her down as a teenager and manipulated her. This man, Tommy Mottola, ran Sony and promised Mariah a superstar career. He had a wife of 20 years and kids of his own, which he decided to leave behind to groom Mariah into his next cash cow. She was fully under his control with surveillance cameras and armed guards. This sounds like a marriage from hell. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the incredibly abusive relationship between Mariah Carey and Tommy Mottola. If you guys don't know who Tommy is, he is a music executive and producer. He has held some very powerful positions in Hollywood. He was previously the chairman and CEO of Sony Music Entertainment, which Sony pretty much owns everything. And he did that for 15 years. There's one moment that Mariah recalls where she realized that she needs to divorce Tommy. And it was after he threatened her with a butter knife, which I know a butter knife isn't necessarily dangerous, but being threatened with any knife is scary. Quote, Tommy walked over and picked up the butter knife from the place setting in front of me. He pressed the flat side of it against my right cheek. Every muscle in my face clenched. My entire body locked in place. My lungs stiffened. Tommy held the knife there. His boys watched and didn't say a word. Quote, after what it seemed like forever, he slowly dragged the thin, cool strip of metal down my burning face. I was searing with rage from the excruciating humiliation of his terrifying, cowardly performance in my kitchen in front of my, quote, colleagues. That was his last show with me as the captive audience. The reason we know about this relationship and Mariah's life is because she released a book titled The Meaning of Mariah, where she opened up about her traumas all from her childhood, her marriage, her music career. She tells it all. Her relationship with Tommy started in 1988. She was 18 years old and she was able to get a demo tape to him. She was at some type of party and somehow it ended up in Tommy's hands, which at that point he was the head of Columbia Records. So Mariah was a teen and Tommy was 20 years older than her. She was waitressing to make money and during her free time writing songs. And getting her tape to Tommy was a big deal because he worked with Michael Jackson and Celine Dion, so he was a very powerful man to kick off her career with. Tommy has actually written a book of his own, and when he wrote about Mariah, he claimed that on his way home, he felt an unbelievable energy running through him. He said, turn the car around. That may be the best voice you've ever heard in your life. After that point, he spent weeks trying to track down Mariah.
Soon after we met, Tommy started making romantic overtures. His persistent gestures and constant attention gave me a sense of safety.
She soon realized it wasn't as safe as she had hoped.
So both Mariah and Tommy corroborate that they were both initially flirty with each other. He says they were flirtatious from the moment he set eyes on her, which was a little bit controversial, not just because he was 20 years older than her, but because he was married and had 2 children. In the year 1990, Tommy signed Mariah to a music contract and then announced that he's divorcing his wife that he had been with for 19 years. Almost 20 years. Mariah's entire life he had been with this woman, Lisa Clark. So this man threw away his entire relationship for a teenager. I mean, he had actually converted to Judaism to marry Lisa, and again, they had 2 children together, so he gave it all up for Mariah.
I was 19 years old and had already lived a lifetime of chaos. Then, this powerful man suddenly came along, parting the seas to make room for my dream.
In the very beginning, I did feel protected by him. I definitely felt that we had a bond in music, that I felt that he believed in me.
There's no doubt that Tommy believed in Mariah. Once they started working together, she started putting out hit after hit. Shortly after his divorce, Mariah and Tommy ended up getting married. She was 23 years old and he was 43. They had a lavish ceremony in New York, and Mariah Carey wore a $25,000 Vera Wang dress inspired by Princess Diana's. Even though Mariah had a beautiful wedding, she got married for all the wrong reasons, because she wasn't really in love with him. She felt controlled by him, and she thought that maybe if they got married, he would lighten up a little bit.
It was pressure from him to get married, but I thought he would lighten his grip on me. I thought he would relax.
I didn't feel like he got the fact that I was also a human being with my own feelings and thoughts.
What made you ignore all of those feelings?
Fear. A lot of it had to do with fear.
So she married Tommy because she feared him. She said that nobody ever saw her on her honeymoon, running down the beach, miserable, crying, and all alone. She claims that her marriage with Tommy wasn't intimate. My relationship with my husband was not a physical one. It just wasn't. That relationship shaped who I am. It beyond shaped me. I still have nightmares about it, which sounds like grooming to me.
My first marriage, I was very much, what's the word? I was kind of locked away, and I was sort of, given the rules and had to stick with them. As I was leaving where we lived in this massive mansion.
So right away, Mariah was under Tommy's control, and she felt super overwhelmed. They just moved into this big mansion together, which she paid for half of, and she feels like she's a prisoner in her own home.
Right? That I paid for half of. People don't know that. That I wanted to, because I didn't want to be like where my mom and we would live with this boyfriend and that boyfriend and whoever and wherever, and they always could say like, get out of my house. I never wanted that for myself. I always wanted it to be like, you know what? I own this too, like whatever. But people didn't look at it like that. They were like, she's a kept woman. The way of thinking at that time was very much like, of course he's doing everything. Of course. But I'm like, hi, I'm a songwriter. That's what I do.
It's so sad to hear Mariah describe this situation, because she had seen her mother go through this, and then she found herself in the same exact situation. She told Cosmopolitan in 2019, quote, "You might want to picture a child bride. There was a conscious effort to keep me this all-American, whatever that means, girl. It was very controlled. There was no freedom for me as a human being. It was almost like being a prisoner." Mariah has also said that many reasonable people questioned why I married Tommy, but none of them questioned the decision more than I did. She also recalls their wedding day, sharing that she saw no way out and never dreamed of getting married at such a young age. She also told Larry King publicly that she felt abused in that marriage.
You know Rihanna?
Yes, I do.
What did you make of that story?
Oh. Yeah, yikes. I don't know. I think that I can't imagine if I had been like I was very, as you know, sequestered when I first started out. And if I was just allowed to be like young and with a young boyfriend who's also a star, and you're working and you're both, I don't know what goes on, you know what I mean? So it's like I wasn't really allowed out of the house. So I can't imagine what she went through.
So you've never been abused like that, ever been hit by anyone? Anyone ever abused you?
Abuse has several categories.
You've been emotionally abused?
Emotionally, mentally.
Why is it hard to get out of it?
Well, it's scary. I just think you get into a situation and you feel locked in if your situation is similar to one of these situations I've been in, which I won't.
No, you don't have to. But it is hard to get out.
For me, to really get out, it was difficult because there was a connection that was not only a marriage, but a, business thing where the person was in control of my life.
You can tell that Mariah wanted to open up in that interview, but she wasn't ready yet. But once her book came out, she released everything. And she also told stories about their home and how there were security cameras and guards around making sure she was doing whatever Tommy wanted.
The singer explains some of the shocking revelations about her marriage to Tommy Mottola and the lengths with which she was held captive at her estate in Bedford.
Brat and I escaped from the big house together, and that's what it felt like. And she was in shock, as was Jermaine, to the degree that there was so much security and armed security.
Mariah also did an interview with Oprah where she told stories in particular, like one about her and her friend named Brat. I believe she went by like Miss Brat or something, and she was friends with Brat, and they tried to go out and live a normal life, but they got in trouble when Mariah would leave the property.
And such a fear that, like, if I was off the grounds, it was like, where is she? It just became a huge, huge thing. Jermaine kept calling, and Jermaine was like, yo, you guys gotta get back here. Like, this is not funny. This is real. Like, you don't understand, Brad.
Like, there are security guys with guns, and they're loading up, and they're coming to find you.
Yeah, he's in the studio trying to, start the beat and get going. And we literally were going to go for 5 minutes, which was a huge deal for me to just go off the property without security. Forget without security, but just with the Brat. And like in that moment, I'm sure they were all like, what is happening?
Mariah also revealed that their home had motion-sensitive cameras inside and out, and she described an incident where she tried to have a private conversation and she had to hide in her shoe closet to have that conversation so the cameras and the audio weren't picked up. So Mariah was living in total fear, because if she wasn't at the home, she was breaking the rules, and then if she was at home, there was so much surveillance she couldn't do anything freely. Can you guys imagine Mariah going out with her friend, just trying to go and, chill, and then they've got armed security guards coming after them because they need to get Mariah back to the property? That seems so just unbelievable. I can't believe that Tommy would feel comfortable. Like, why would you even want to have this dynamic with your wife? And I'm sure that his relationship with Lisa wasn't like this. I mean, they had 2 kids together. Lisa wasn't necessarily a big star, so I don't know why he treated Mariah so differently and why he also wanted a relationship like this. In this passage, Mariah describes how uncomfortable she was in her own home and how these cameras were constantly watching her. She would have to sneak downstairs for a snack or to sit down at the table and to write some lyrics. And as soon as she felt at peace or at calm, she would hear beep beep from the intercom, and Tommy would ask her, "What you doing?" It would crackle through the speaker and her whole body would freeze, because the moment she felt like she was alone or just chilling or having a snack or writing some lyrics, she realizes that she's never alone.
Sleeping and you getting up and leaving the bed just to go to a room privately, and then hearing through the intercom, "Where are you? What are you doing?"
Just made everything just back into like this stiff moment of being at attention.
Mariah was quoted saying, "Every move I made, everywhere I went, I was monitored. Minute by minute, day after day, year after year. I was living my dream but couldn't leave my house. Lonely and trapped. I was held captive in that relationship. Captivity and control come in many forms, but the goal is always the same: to break down the captive's will and to kill any notion of self-worth and to erase the person's memory of their own soul." So she sounds like she's like being brainwashed in this situation, and it really reminds me of like what Britney Spears was going through in her conservatorship. Mariah had an interview with Meghan Markle, and during this interview she was quoted saying, "My first marriage, I was very, I was kind of locked away, and I was sort of, given the rules, and I had to stick with them." She also told Meghan that it was extremely difficult for her to divorce him in 1998, which you would think it would be really easy at this point because everything seemed so horrible, but she felt completely trapped that she had no means of being able to go and even file divorce, I guess. Eventually, Mariah was able to file from divorce from Tommy, but it took a lot for her to do so. She described him as like humidity, inescapable. She could not get away. Quote, "It felt like he was cutting off my circulation, keeping me from my friends and what little family I had." If you had not seen my video about her family feuds, then definitely go and check it out. "I couldn't talk to anyone that wasn't under Tommy's control. I couldn't go out or do anything with anybody. I couldn't move freely in my own house." So it sounds like Tommy has a bunch of yes men working for him who will do whatever he says. If Mariah were to go to one of them and try to talk to them about her situation, she probably would get in trouble and they would go and snitch on her. But she did manage to put together a to-go bag filled with essentials under her bed in case she ever needed to escape from Tommy. So she was ready to leave this abusive marriage, but she couldn't. I don't think Mariah ever felt loved by Tommy at all. I felt like she was his project that he wanted to make the next biggest thing and probably to cash in a lot on her success, which I'm sure he did. But I don't think he ever loved her because of how he treated her. And there were some racist moments in their relationship, which racism is something that Mariah has always had issues with. So the fact that her husband was being racist towards her just sounds really miserable. She was quoted saying, "From the moment that Tommy signed me, he tried to wash the quote urban off of me, just as he did with my appearance. Tommy smoothed out my songs for Sony, trying to make them more general and more universal, more ambiguous. I always felt like he wanted to convert me into what he understood a mainstream, meaning white, artist." At another point in her book, Mariah recalled a moment where Tommy became enraged when Mariah spoke highly of Sean Diddy Combs. Quote, "Puffy will be shining my shoes in 2 years." Mariah says that that was one of the very few times she stood up to Tommy, telling him that what he said was blatantly racist. So there are many reasons why Mariah should leave Tommy, and she just can't get herself to do so. But then she meets a man. His name is Derek Jeter. He was an athlete, and Mariah credits him as the catalyst that helped her get out of her relationship with Tommy, because she believed that there was somebody else out there for her. When she was with Tommy, she was so isolated, she felt like there was nothing else in this world but this. But meeting this guy named Derek, he was able to show her that she does deserve love. He was a former baseball player in the 90s, and I guess they met at a dinner. They exchanged numbers and began sneaking around with their relationship. While their relationship was short, Mariah thanked Derek in her book for being the reason she was able to escape from her marriage with Tommy. She said that he was the catalyst that helped her get out of that relationship because she believed there was somebody else. He was also doing his dream job, living his dream job. I believe we connected in that same way because she was supposedly living the life, but when she went home, everything was horrible. So she wasn't truly living the dream of being a pop star and having a happy life and spending the money that you've made however you'd like.
He was a catalyst, and I think that it was beautiful, and his family was a healthy family, you know, and yes, those things did play a huge part in their dysfunction, but it was healthy for me to see a functional family that, you know, basically kind of looked like mine, but didn't feel like mine.
When they were together, Mariah did think that Derek may have been her soulmate, but he was really just proof that she could have something else beautiful on the other side of this hell that was her marriage. So once Derek stepped in, Mariah finally found the courage to divorce from Tommy in 1998. But their divorce wasn't a pretty one. In 2001, Tommy started using his powers at Sony to sabotage Mariah, and he actually sent a bunch of money towards Jennifer Lopez and her projects to try to overshadow Mariah and her work.
Mariah left Tommy, but he didn't let her get away easily.
He was angry about the divorce and my departure from Sony, and he used all his power and connections to punish me. Sony rushed to make a single for another female entertainer on their label.
Part of the melody in Jennifer's hit I'm Real comes from Mariah's own song Loverboy.
In her book, she writes that much of the hate that Glitter received was Tommy's fault. Much of what went wrong with Glitter led back to Tommy. He was angry about the divorce and my departure from Sony, and he used all his power and connections to punish me. This was the birth of Mariah Carey's and Jennifer Lopez's feud. If you guys want a video about that one, leave a comment below. But in Tommy's book, he even recognizes that his relationship with Mariah was wrong. He wrote that it was, quote, absolutely wrong, which I'm glad he knows, and inappropriate, which it was. He was quoted saying, "If it seemed like I was controlling, I apologize. Was I obsessive? Yes, but that was also part of the reason for her success." Yes, it's true, Tommy does credit himself for her success. I think that statement alone rubs people the wrong way because, yeah, he can take credit for part of her success, but not all of her success. And also, why are you even taking credit in the first place? Like, I feel like you guys can talk about your relationship and that can be it, but you don't need to go and, I don't know, really involve her career and her self-worth with your ability to have given her this success in this platform. Yes, you pushed her out through Sony, but you also tried to ruin her at some point. I don't think that Tommy's necessarily an evil guy, even though maybe he is, because I believe I saw a statement that like Michael Jackson said that Tommy's like the most evil man in the music industry. So if you want a video about like Tommy and really exposing him, I could totally do that. But I think part of the problem here and what Tommy recognizes is that, quote, "The problem was that I was the chairman of Sony and her husband at the same time." So he realizes that mixing work and love isn't right. And there's that weird power dynamic where your boss is your husband and he has control not only of your life, but your career. And I'm sure that Tommy became really nervous when he heard about Mariah's book because he was going to be a big part of it. He made some statements to the press that he was wishing her well, even though she was teasing her book using his name. He said, "I'm deeply gratified to have played that role in Mariah's well-deserved and remarkable success," and he continues to wish her the best. But then in the same statement, he calls Mariah's allegations of abuse untrue and a lot of crap. But he also admits to being truly sorry for any discomfort or pain that all my good intentions inevitably caused Mariah, and most of all for the scars it left on my two oldest children. So, I mean, remember the kids saw the butter knife situation? Like, who knows what other abuse they saw. But honestly, props to Mariah for being such a strong woman. I'm so impressed with her time and time again. Her family feud situation, that video, insane. And then this video of Tommy, like, she's gone through so much. She's truly like a role model.
Mariah was done with Tommy's games as she now had the strength to succeed on her own.
I'm going to do what I am setting out to do, and there's nobody that can stop me.
I think we can all learn from Mariah's experiences and take away some of those lessons because she's lived a lot, and look at how she's doing now. It is so incredibly impressive. Now that I'm thinking about it, she had that billionaire like fiance at some point. I can make a video about that as well. Comment below what you guys want me to talk about next. Here's my email if you have any other video ideas for me, and I'll see you in a new video soon. Bye guys.